Let's now get the thoughts of political analyst Rommel Banlaoi from the Philippine Society for International Security Studies and China's Southeast Asia Research Center on the South China Sea. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. If we're taking a look at all of these confrontations over the past year, they have further strained relations between the Philippines and China, and it's really growing very tense under the Marcos administration. Are we in the middle of the end of cordial relations with Beijing?
Well, right now, I describe the current relationship between China and the Philippines as in the state of like in the cliff, waiting to fall down. So it's a very saddening situation. And as a scholar tasked to promote better understanding between the Philippines and China and pursuing friendship between the two nations, I really feel bad about the worsening relationship as a result of escalating tensions in the West Philippine Sea. So both parties have to exert effort to stop this kind of escalation.
So what are the risks, sir, if this confrontational trend continues? If we are currently on that cliff with China and we're about to fall off it?
Well, China can do tougher actions if we continue to do what we are doing also in the West Philippine Sea. And based on my understanding on the plans of the Philippine government, we will not stop from our assertion of sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea, as well as pursuing our territorial sovereignty over the land features around the West Philippine Sea. We have to understand, Rico, that there are two positions of the Philippines when it comes to the disputes in the West Philippine Sea. Territorial sovereignty over the land features and sovereign rights over the waters, especially those falling under our exclusive economic zone and also continental shelf. So we will not stop from our determination to fight for our sovereign rights and to defend our territorial sovereignty.
All right.
But China is also determined not to stop from disrupting us from our activities. And if this current trend continues, I expect worst thing to happen. And China can pursue tougher actions than we have already experienced from them.
So both sides, none of the sides will really give in.
Because that tougher action will really be painful, not only for the Philippines, but also for the entire region.
So with this latest bullying act, Rommel, by the Chinese, should the government consider downgrading its diplomatic ties with China and recall our ambassador to China, Jaime Flor Cruz, and also return the Chinese ambassador back to Beijing?
For me, it will not contribute to the peaceful settlement of our territorial disputes and maritime jurisdictional conflicts with China. It will only worsen our bilateral ties with China. What we need is a better relationship in order to come out with the peaceful settlement of our territorial disputes. Because if our relationship will really deteriorate so badly, there is no other way but to experience what I call unintended violent encounter that might lead to even armed conflict between the two countries that happened, for example, between Vietnam and China over the parcel during the late 70s. So we don't want that kind of situation to happen because it will not only undermine the national interests of both parties, but also will undermine the efforts of the littoral state in the South China Sea to have a peaceful and stable regional security environment. And we have to be reminded, Rico, that the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea has provisions for both parties in territorial disputes to promote duty to cooperate. In fact, they are being mandated to pursue peaceful settlement of territorial disputes in order to avoid armed confrontation. And they encourage parties to have provisional arrangement Okay?
But of course, Rommel, we're saying about all of these
without
laws.
prejudice to their existing claims.
Yeah, we're talking
Without
about
prejudice to their
UNCLOS.
existing national positions.
We're talking about UNCLOS. We're talking about the 2016 arbitral award. But it seems like China is not respecting the laws. And of course, there are different points of view right now from various sectors. One is to summon Beijing's envoy or even replace the current envoy with with an envoy who will listen to both sides of the issue. But will Beijing really listen to us? Will they really stop these acts of aggressions if even they change their envoy to the Philippines?
In my understanding of China's foreign policy and China's security policy, China will not listen to our diplomatic protest because China has already rejected the International Arbitral Tribunal. And China will always challenge our activities in the West Philippine Sea. And China will oppose all our unilateral activities in the West Philippine Sea. The only way to have a peaceful settlement with China is to really come out with a provisional arrangement with China to have what I call what UNCLOS would call a mutual restraint agreement in order to avoid this kind of incidents to happen. In fact, UNCLOS is requiring all parties in conflict to exercise the duty to cooperate in good faith without surrendering their respective national positions. So, yeah, that's the situation that we find ourselves.
Well, this conflict, this confrontation will definitely continue. Philippine China expert and analyst
It should
Rommel.
stop. This confrontation should stop, and it can only be stopped if the two parties will reopen their channels of communication to rebuild confidence and start discussions again to manage their differences and settle peacefully their existing territorial disputes. Because if they will insist on doing their own unilateral activities without proper coordination, well, it can only lead to unintended violent encounter. We don't want that kind of thing to happen.
We
And
do
in
hope.
my understanding,
We do hope.
China is ready to do tougher actions against us, and I'm so afraid of that situation. And the only way to avoid that is to pursue preventive diplomacy for the two parties to talk about their differences and manage peacefully their national positions and settle their existing disputes. There's no other way. There's no other way because we have already done it through the International Arbitral Tribunal.
Sir.
We have already done it by expanding the Enhanced Defense
Mr.
Cooperation
Banlaoi.
Agreement. You know, and
Rommel,
China
Rommel,
is
Rommel.
not scared of all these efforts that we are doing.
Yes. Rommel, I hope you don't mind. We have to end the discussion. We've run out of time. Thank you so much. We do hope that both sides will come to an agreement and sit down sooner rather than later. Rommel Banlaoi, thank you so much for joining us.